Yes, that's right. The colleges across the country are inundated with liberation theology, the no God religion that seeks to create some utopian nonsense on earth, the little cult that tries to reinvent religion, reinvent Christianity, and thank goodness it has failed. Welcome to Unschool, where we undoctrinate you from public school nonsense. Because it's a pretty terrible ideology. It's pretty horrible. Yet people continue to push it. We have this article coming out tomorrow um, called Liberation Theology, which discusses some of what's going on college campuses. And we have James Lindsay up here discussing the same situation with these cults. He says, I know people are all excited, that should say, to see the universities facing their own monster they raised, thinking it's like some comeuppance or something. But I read the history of the Chinese Cultural Revolution that started the exact same way, right? Because what do Marxists want to do and all their derivative ideologies? They want to destroy society. They want to destroy institutions. They want to destroy culture and reinvent it in their own image, right? Not in God's image, in their own personal image. It's a religion, really, of narcissism. So it's just not a good thing at all, right? Here's another little tweet or whatever we call it now in X. It says all this and basically nothing more can be yours for just $80,000 to $90,000 a year. At most schools, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but for your degree, spending almost 100K is hardly surprising. It says here, scientific facts are social constructs. Is that true? No, that is not true. Science is not just a matter of interpretation. They're trying to suss out the truth. So it's it's quite odd that they're studying this sort of thing, but they're trying to bring Marxist ideology into more conventional subjects and ruin them. So it is their own little cultish religion. Okay, it says here this is the cult related to communism behind much of the radical cultural shift that has allowed our current communist revolution to be as successful as it has been. The evolutionary leaders and their cult have been mainstreamed by people like Oprah Winfrey, big, whatever that part means. This is from Lisa Logan. There is a cult behind our radical cultural shift, and their name is the evolutionary leaders. Well, we're calling it liberation theology because that's a lot of what the origin of it in Brazil. We'll discuss more about that in a second. But based upon a world religion called New Thought, they've gotten their Gnostic ideas into society through one of the most influential and widely watched people in the media. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Oprah Winfrey, of all people. And again, Gnosticism is the belief that originally it was the belief that it wasn't God that created the universe, it was the devil, and the devil was just out to get everyone. And they can essentially take that ideology into society and say, that Western institutions were created to oppress everyone. So when you hear people saying nonsense statements like that about institutions that they were just meant to oppress others, you know that person is influenced by Gnostic ideology. So we'll watch a little bit of this video really quick, but we won't watch the whole thing.
What I hope to see this afternoon is that we each articulate our vision of a transformed society. We each articulate how we're going to play a role. Then we take that collective data, put out that collective brain, put out our collective intent and our commitment to participation, and then recruit the resources and energies and the consciousness of all in the world who are on that frequency, and we do it through the help of media. I decided to invite my first guest on the show after getting a phone call from Michael Jackson. He was calling to let me know that I absolutely had to have Dr. Deepak Chopra on the show. We're invoking the power of prayer today. Guiding our prayer mission is one of America's foremost spiritual teachers, I call her. Please welcome Marianne Williamson. Tonight we're talking about my favorite topic,
on earth, spirituality. Reverend Michael Beckwith is the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center. His new book is called Spiritual Liberation.
So let's remember, liberation is often used by cultists, right? People who support classical liberalism advocate for liberty, or the idea that we should embrace individual rights. People who discuss liberation are usually pushing some sort of religious cult, and they want to liberate all of society. They don't want to just, they're not worried about their own personal religious denomination so much as reinventing whatever religious denomination they might pretend to be a part of. And so it's a messed up ideology. And it's all about achieving some higher level of consciousness. So obviously Oprah Winfrey is pushing for that kind of nonsense. And you can look this video up if you want to watch the rest of it, but it is a little bit messed up. And then this is a clip from the college campus protests. He says they're communists, and obviously it says, referring to the United States, we want to smash the Democrat Party, we want to smash the Republican Party, we want to smash this whole gosh darn capitalist imperialist regime. So yeah, they are obviously communists. Capitalism really is just individual liberty. It's spontaneous order. It's people going out and pursuing their own positive self-interest that benefits people around them, benefits themselves, benefits their family, and so on. So he's talking about colonialism. Again, that's part of that Gnostic cult that pushes this ideology that the West was created in order to colonize and oppress everyone. A huge problem with their argument is that the colonial powers were the biggest movements to end slavery, right? The British Empire had the blockade of Africa in 1809. Thomas Jefferson started even before that, sending the Marines to Tripoli in 1807 and saying, hey, quit enslaving our people. And he stopped he was part of the our move in America to end the importation of slaves, and so on and so forth. So the colonial powers have been the biggest opponents to slavery throughout history. They've gone to a number of areas of the world and tried to end it. And in many cases, those countries rejected that. Now we can barely hear what he's saying, but obviously these guys are communists and they're just pushing ridiculous ideologies. Here's another older tweet from Ibram X. Kendi, who is also kind of a liberation theology cultish leader. He's just more focused on racial consciousness than class consciousness. Who else was racially conscious? Probably Nazis. I think that socialists and fascists are class conscious, right? Fascism comes from the word fasci, which literally means trade unionist. So the Nazis, on the other hand, were kind of not really socialist or fascist. They were a little bit of, they took a little bit from both of those ideologies and created their own nonsense. And I think Ibram X. Kendi is closer to them, but that's a pretty controversial opinion. It says here, and savior theology informs racism, and liberation theology informs anti-racism. So he uses the phrase right there, liberation theology, which we've been discussing for a while. Are we trying to save people from their own inferiority, or are we trying to liberate people from oppressive power and policy? In the Christianity that I know, Jesus was a revolutionary. Jesus definitely did not push liberation theology. They're trying to reinvent, as I said earlier, religion itself, which also Hitler tried to do. He tried to reinvent Jesus as an Aryan supermensch. And it's pretty ridiculous. So the Gnostics are always trying to reinvent, people from the past and just lie to people about what they say. This guy says Christ continually and specifically rejected political or government power throughout his ministry. Moreover, the Gospels specifically reject the concept of racial identity in Christ. Critical race theory and liberation theology are therefore fundamentally incompatible with the Gospels. Absolutely. It says there, Jesus literally avoided politics. He dealt with broken and hurt people in the here and now. There will always be poor, there will always be broken, but politicians and those trying to create revolutions all had selfish motives, right? That's the essence of Gnosticism, is really selfishness and narcissism. They want to reinvent humanity in their image as opposed to in God's image. Sadly, Ibram, you have selfish motives. Absolutely. He's made millions of dollars. He's taken tons of money. And if you read one of the other articles on the Unschool Substack, I discuss how his little fake charity had to fire tons of people because he kept just swindling money out of the organization. And he wasn't trying to help anybody. He hasn't done any charitable work for anyone. He just has used it to make tens of millions of dollars from his book deals. The guy can't even define racism. It's terrible. Says here exactly, and despite the Gospels rejecting politics and racial identity, it is catching the wildfire amongst even the slightest left-leaning churches. We might even call colleges and universities left-leaning churches at this point. That's why so many people keep leaving. A lot of people can't explain why they dislike what's happening in college because it's so convoluted that it's difficult to put into words. But a few of us are trying to do just that, to express these sorts of things. And then finally, liberation theology comes from Paulo Freire. And although that's not directly discussed too much in this article, Freire was denied communion by many Catholic priests and bishops because he probably should have been excommunicated. But again, a lot of the time churches try to stay out of politics and not get involved. But essentially, Paulo Freire is responsible for ruining the education system in Brazil and the rest of South America. And for the past few decades, he's had a very negative influence on the United States. He is the third most cited source on the social sciences, which should make people uncomfortable. Because in that book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he regularly praises Vladimir Lenin, who's famous for killing 4 million people. He praises Che Guevara. So if you wonder why college students are wearing Che Guevara t-shirts, it's because their teachers are teaching from the gospel of the pedagogy of the oppressed. And that is a failed ideology. It's a disgusting ideology. It says that people don't have intrinsic value and that we should just only analyze them or only judge them based on their political identity. That's not okay. We shouldn't do that. That's in opposition to preachers like Martin Luther King Jr., who said, judge people by the content of their character. That's what I support, and I hope that the followers of my blog do as well.